Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. You can find us on the web at hsstaffing.com. I hope you'll consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and speech writing needs. I am thrilled to be joined today by Tracy Lamourie. We will be discussing media, publicity, and becoming a thought leader. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap companies to nonprofits as well as high-net-worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at pk-cpas.com or call them at 973-882-8810. They will be happy to be of service. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you so much.
My pleasure. Please take a few moments and introduce yourself to our viewers.
So my name is Tracy Lamourie. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. I work internationally when it's not COVID. I'm an international award-winning publicist, working across industries and working with everybody from creatives to entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, corporations, and high-end entertainment projects. So right across the board.
What's media?
Media is those traditional platforms before we had social media, the only way we ever had to be heard, which was, radio, television, newspapers, and now I include podcasts in that mainstream media. So to me, media is, when I think of media, I think of unlike a platform like a social media where you can post whatever you want. Basically, media is something where there is an editor, a producer, some kind of editorial content where you have to pitch to be seen. So it's not, and I'm not talking about the advertising side of media. I'm talking about the earned media, the editorial room, the newsrooms.
Talk to us about publicity. What do you mean by publicity?
Publicity is the whole thing, anything that gets you in front of the public. So as a publicist, I work to get my clients in media, obviously, but I also work to get them on stages. I work to get them in speaking engagements. I work to get them on awards shows and award stages, all of that stuff. So anything that elevates and celebrates what they're doing, shines a spotlight on what that individual is doing, whoever they might be.
How has technology impacted the way you work in your industry? For example, there's a website, helpareporter.com. I've used them since 2010. I've been quoted in something like 750 articles and over 500 publications. What we're doing right now is YouTube. It's free. There are a couple websites that I use. I believe that's how we connected. If you're interested in going on a podcast, that's the service. So there are a lot of alternatives to the traditional which you represent. So what's your pitch? What do you offer that you can't get for free?
So part of that is all those tools are things that I definitely utilize. And I say those, some of the ones you mentioned, I talk about them in podcasts a lot. Those are the opposite of a press release. So the traditional press release is, we think of a strategy, we think of a story, we frame your story, we reach out to all our contacts in national media, local media, wherever we decide is more appropriate. And we still do that. And we still get lots of, play that way. So some people can do that on their own, some people can't. And even in the Hero, yes, those tools are tools that I talk about all the time when I talk to entrepreneurs, and the Help a Reporter Out that you mentioned, and other things like it, like Source Bottle, and there's another one that I can't remember that I use also, and like you mentioned, the matchmakers and the podcasts and all those things. So I talk about all those as tools for entrepreneurs because I speak often about if you have, if you have more time than money, then definitely do some of this yourself. If you have more money than time, you want someone to do it. But there's more to it than that as well, because when I talk about those and I give those tools to people by talking about them in shows like this, But I always say, don't even go to them until you understand a few other things that you clearly understand by the results that you're getting, which is that the pitch, which is different than your elevator pitch. It's different than your sales pitch. The pitch of what makes you a good interview and a good source for their story is different from what most entrepreneurs are thinking, because most entrepreneurs are advertorial, right? We don't understand the editorial. So the big difference between editorial and advertorial is huge when you're reaching out even to the heroes and all those. And then understanding, what was I going to say? There's the pitch and there's the editorial versus advertorial, and those are huge because I find I give those tools to people all the time and they don't know how to use them, and then they come back and say, oh, I tried the hero, but I didn't get anything out of it. There's a real skill to obviously there's things like answering quickly and answering well and not following instruction, having your perfect pitch where you sound like you're a credible source and all that stuff, but essentially a lot of it comes down to just the education and framing, understanding the difference between editorial and advertorial. And while that sounds easy, I find, and I talk to entrepreneurs and solopreneurs all the time, that is a huge lesson they have to learn. Even when we're writing a release, we'll go over and over and talk about, this is editorial. No, I know you think that's great. I know it's a great thing and your product is awesome and your business idea is great. But again, that's not a news story, so you have to really understand audiences, the messaging. For some people, to things that to you and me might seem easy, even you're clearly a writer if you're able to answer all those heroes. I deal with a lot of entrepreneur experts who are hugely skilled in their field and fantastic at what they do, but when you send them a hero query to help a reporter out, they're like, what do I do with this? How do I answer? And so not everyone's a writer, and they get stuck in, they're like, oh, I didn't think I had to write an essay. Whereas you and me, like, no, you're not writing an essay, you're just talking about your expertise. So there's a whole bunch of points for a whole bunch of people that make it a lot less easy than we think to just successfully use those tools. But to your first question too, like, absolutely, there's been the fact that those are open is part of what I talk about in my book. Is it's, to me, I see this like assembly line of opportunity going by every single entrepreneur, and they're just ignoring most of those because you're a rarity even as an entrepreneur who knows about those sites or even is thinking about those sites, because 80 or 90% of entrepreneurs aren't even thinking about things like PR or leadership. They know about advertising, and that's where they're stuck. And they really have trouble, switching it from selling my product to selling me as a thought leader, which makes me able to sell my product. It's a long answer to your question.
That's fine. And what surprised me from your answer was that there's a clear difference between what you can do and what can be done on Hero. On Hero, you're not really pitching. You're answering a question. You already know that the reporter is interested in the topic, so you don't have to convince them that the topic is important. You're answering their question. But what you as a publicist can do is you can pitch to your sources and then get your client onto the platform, whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
Isn't that really the key difference?
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, really, it is too, finding those opportunities, because those Hero and Source Model and even, Matchmaker and all those are 4 or 5 of a million things that we spend our day, all day, looking for opportunities. So we have a client, you literally have somebody that's always looking for these opportunities for you, as opposed to you taking an hour out of the day, or even, if you're getting that much Hero, so you're clearly putting a lot of time into it, right? So, you look through the Heroes 3 times a day when they come out looking for things. So a lot of people just don't have that time as well. And you probably don't have the time. I do that.
Well, there was at the very beginning, I was addicted to it.
Yeah.
Now I don't.
I remember that too. You're like, oh my God. I remember being mad when the weekends came because the Heroes didn't come on the weekends.
You go through withdrawal. It's almost like withdrawal. But I cut it down a lot because I learned something, which brings me to my next point. I was quoted in the Wall Street Journal. So I appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the print edition, the Wall Street Journal website, Then they have a special website for finance. They've got one for technology, and they've got another one. I don't remember what. So I am appearing on 5 Wall Street Journal, let's call them sites, 4 internet, 1 paper. And then I get quoted on some cockamamie website that nobody's ever heard of. Now I go to Google Analytics a couple weeks later, and I've got maybe 1 or 2 people who have gone to my website and may or may not have contacted me from the Wall Street Journal, which is the gold standard. Hey, you were quoted in the Wall Street Journal. But I had 10 or 15 from this cockamamie website that nobody ever heard of.
That's hilarious. And that doesn't surprise me. That's really funny that you told that. I thought you were going somewhere else with that, but yeah, that's actually really funny because that's so true. And and you can't always tell. Like, I've done the same thing. SEO too can be crazy. I had a client who literally told me, and she was at a very set, she hired me. And then 6 weeks after hiring me, she told me, "You literally changed my business and my life." And we'd only got, in 6 weeks, we've had, I think we had 4 articles. 2 of them were like major industry ones. 2 of them were similar to like what you were saying. The article was great, but it's a site I hadn't heard of. I just, but they'll do a good article, so I throw it there without even thinking about it. We do it, and then I forget about it. I'm more focused on all the big ones, all the big names. And then sure enough, but it looked sharp. She literally told me, "You changed my business and my life." When I asked why, she's like, "People, even me just sharing those," and she pointed out some of those articles. She's like, "When I share those things on on LinkedIn, people are taking me more seriously. Investors are taking me more seriously when we're talking." So it's one thing when your friend from high school is like, "Oh, you're doing really well," but it's another thing when investors are like, because that can make the difference between $1 million or no, sorry, next. And so she literally told me, and so that and I hadn't even been thinking, because I was thinking more about your potential clients coming to you and building your brand above the competitor, but I hadn't thought about, no, that's true. Obviously, when investors are looking to whether they're going to drop $2 million, or that thought leadership that you build is hugely important. And also, to your point on the Wall Street Journal, exactly, it surprises people. Sometimes you get a major media, and then really you don't get any calls from it. You don't get results from it that you think you wouldn't, like you would if you placed an ad maybe in a big thing like that. But that's because it's advertising is different from media. It's from PR and media. You're playing the long game with your thought leadership, and it's not necessarily a matter of like you're placing an ad here and you expect this kind of ROI, because people who are reading it, they may be getting different, who knows what they're drawing from it, but they're not necessarily, eventually it helps your sales. Eventually it helps but it's not like from that one thing you should expect 10, even when it's the Wall Street Journal. But like you said, I laugh, because sometimes I'm putting out a press release and I'm thinking, this is so good. It's so important. Like,
Well, I think we almost made it, but Tracy, you've frozen again. We're not going to stop and redo this.
something, and then all of a sudden I've got 3 national media, and I'm just like, so sometimes it's not always what you think. The newsroom is different from what you think. It's not always the biggest story that gets it, or
we may have just spoken over each other because you froze again. Now, just so everybody understands, we tried this about 15 minutes ago, and the system kept on freezing on us, which is probably why subconsciously we're talking quickly so we can get through everything, and hopefully we'll get done with the interview. One of the things you just mentioned, which is a good segue to what I wanted to talk about, was that when you place an ad in a newspaper, we'll go back to the Wall Street Journal. You buy a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal. All that means is you've got thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars to spend on an ad. But you get quoted in the Wall Street Journal. That means you're an authority on your topic.
exactly.
And then how you promote that, sharing it on LinkedIn and the other media, That gets your name out there. And the fact that you were quoted in the Wall Street Journal gives you credibility.
Exactly.
Now, is credibility what makes you a thought leader? What is a thought leader?
I would say that's fair. I don't love the term thought leader. It's not one that I would, it's kind of come out of nowhere in the last couple of years, but you know what we mean when we say it. So I use it when I say it, and it's what I'm talking about is people that, you like you said, you're an authority in your field. You're considered an authority, by people within your field. And also, I think a component to that is speaking about what you do and outside of your field. So basically, like a TED Talks person or somebody who's speaking.
Tracy, I am going to assume that you are giving a brilliant answer to my question. And I regret that I am going to do what I am now going to do, which I have never done before. I am going to mute you. I can't even do that. So something has gone wrong. We did get through the main points, and I'm happy for that. Obviously, we just lost the connection altogether. Tracy, I was just about explaining to our audience that we're having connection problems. We've gotten through the main points. Before I let you go, now intentionally, I want to first I'm sharing your contact information. And I would like to ask you one question that under the circumstances is kind of funny, but it's a question I ask all of my guests. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you wish I had asked you?
No, just nothing in particular. Just wanted to let people know that I do work internationally, and anywhere where there's English speaking media. And if anybody is interested in talking to me, I'm happy to do a 30-minute free consult with them. But in general, what I mostly just want to leave people with is to consider media and consider PR in general, in part of your outreach. Because I know, again, 80 to 90% of entrepreneurs know everything they need to know about marketing and selling and their advertising, but they are literally just letting free opportunities to build their own brand, and to get that credibility, and to attract investors, and to attract more customers, and to differentiate themselves from the competition by using those free media opportunities that are literally there for the taking with a little bit of work.
Well, Tracy, I thank you for your patience.
Thank
you for coming back.
Sorry about that.
No, it's nobody. It's I don't know whose fault it is.
We're not sure. The interwebs.
It's the internet. We'll blame the internet. I'm sorry it happened. I think we got across the major points to our viewers, and that's what's important. So I thank you for profusely for coming on. I'm Bruce Hurwitz. Thank you for watching, and as always, please stay focused on success.